I'm back. Now, the organizers of Cape to Cairo road trip say it is to showcase cultures, cuisines and the beautiful mother continent. The 12,000-kilometer trip is also a way to present Africa as a tourist destination. For more on this fascinating road trip, we are now joined by organizer Sanda Zungu. Sanda, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Good evening, Katleho. Good morning to your viewers. Thank you.
No, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. What is the aim and the objective of Cape to Cairo?
Well, obviously, the objective is that we reach Cairo.
Of course.
Okay. But the real aim is that we showcase the beautiful continent that we have, the history, the cultures, the cuisines, the people. And I think Africa has a lot to offer in terms of the people. In many ways, Africa has been given a bad name tag. And Africa is a wonderful place. So it's really largely about that and the opportunities that are within our continent.
So who are you taking on this trip? How many participants do you have?
Well, we have trial runs. The ultimate trip, which is in 2024, will have over 30 participants traveling all the way to Cairo. But we're having trial runs in the build-up to Cape to Cairo 2024. We finished the first trial run in Askenpan in the Northern Cape in June. And of course, now, next week, we're taking about 21 guys all the way to the Southern African trip, the Heritage Run, in September.
So talking about these trial runs, what do they entail?
So it's about match fit in terms of the vehicle itself. We're driving a W123, known as the car engineered like no other car on earth.
Right.
So we're taking the Mercedes-Benz W123. So we have to check and make sure that the vehicle itself is match fit, that the team is match fit, that the dynamics of the team are okay. Because we're traveling with these people next year, we need to make sure that as we traverse all these countries, these 8 countries, that the core team is able to adapt and obviously make well the trip with the guests that we'll be traveling with.
You make mention of the W123, and this is a car that has been assembled in South Africa, and some of its parts are found manufactured in the country. What's so special about this particular car that you're entrusting these 12,000 kilometers of trudging throughout Africa in?
Well, if you look around, W123 was built between 1975 and 1986.
Right.
Give or take, the car is about 40 years old. When you look around on the road today, there is no other car on the road with its contemporaries. But the beautiful story is that, I think you just hit it as well, Katleho, that the vehicle itself was produced in South Africa. So in fact, the vehicle itself, the first factory established for the W123 outside of Germany was East London in South Africa. So we produce about 80,000 units of these cars. In fact, 40% of the vehicle was locally sourced, right?
Yes.
And the actual engine of the vehicle was actually made in South Africa, in Atlanta. So by far and large, the W123 is a beautiful story of Africa and South Africa. It talks about industrialization of South Africa, materials, and more importantly for us, the artisanry and the skill base from here home. It's a proper, wonderful story.
And how important is it for us to showcase that artisanry and the skill and the craftsmanship in all other aspects of what we have on the continent? I mean, going through all these countries, it will be about the cuisine, it will be about all the different offerings that you don't find anywhere else in the world.
Absolutely. I think, so the team and I, we've traveled within Africa, and the early days when we traveled within Africa, our eyes popped out because we had a very different view and sense of what Africa was. And it's not just crafts. It's the skill base in terms of what Africa can do. Of course, we know what has happened over the years in terms of the skill and the industrialization going elsewhere. And I think it's very, very key that we showcase what we can do and build on the skills that we once had.
Now, you say this is a project that has been 10 years in the making. You've had a public transport voyage of the same kind. Just talk us through what those experiences were like.
Public transport, we traveled by public transport from Cape Town to the East Coast, Namibia, Kolmanskop, all the way to Lusaka, Tanzania, etc. The beautiful thing about that trip is to disappear. It was to disappear with the locals and actually get to connect with the people in the most earnest way, in the most honest way. What you don't want to do is to appear as a tourist.
Right.
So you really want to immerse yourself in the local culture and disappear. So we were able to, because we look the same, right?
Right.
So we're able to really make very good connections with the guys. So of course, in terms of learnings and what we picked up from there, is there's so much potential that we need to show, particularly people here at home. And it's great to go to Europe and the East, etc. But there's so much within South Africa, there's so much within our neighboring countries that we are yet to discover. And I believe, and this is what we always say, that the search engine is not going to give you everything.
Right.
You need to go there and feel it and see it and touch it and taste it. And that makes the whole lot difference.
I mean, you spoke of perceptions earlier on of the African continent, especially amongst Africans ourselves, and just the experience that many Africans don't have of the African continent, but we look so much to the global north in terms of exploring. How would you implore Africans to not only just travel within their own countries, but to truly explore the continent itself?
I mean, if you look, let me give you a typical example. I flew out of, a while ago, I flew out of Kenya with the same crew. We flew out on Kenya Airways back to South Africa. The crew were ladies, 2 ladies, and they looked like me. So it landed in Joburg, and we all went to the cockpit because we were so excited. There's so much that is out there that we still need to explore, the talents, the gifts. African people are great people. And I'm just touching on that as an example. But across the continent, the African people are welcoming. They want to hear your story. They want to share your story. And you want to share your story to them. And I think there's so much we can unlearn, and there's so much that we can learn. If we just step out a little bit more, we'll discover a whole lot more.
And of course, in terms of discovering and seeing this beautiful continent, there is the aspect of the economics around it. How much of the economic aspect of tourism are we not tapping into, especially on the African continent?
And Africa has been a black sheep. So if you look at Africa in terms of wars and strifes, the rap in terms of poverty, when you look at states like Kenya, the great wild beast migration, very popular. You look at Cape Town in South Africa, being a very popular destination, even Soweto in some respects. But we've missed quite a bit in between. We've missed the side shows. And by that I mean the day-to-day guy. Because travel is, for us, is not so much about buildings and architecture. That's all great. But it's really about people. It's connecting with people. And what Cape to Cairo seeks to do is obviously to showcase their daily lives and how do they survive. Not necessarily that we'll adopt it, but for you to have an appreciation much, much more of other people. And that they are just like you and I, trying to make ends meet. So from an economic perspective, I think there's so much more, and they call it, it's not your mainstream tourism, but it's just going to the local corners, the local coffee shop or the local spaza shop and having a conversation with the local guy. You'll be so amazed how much you discover. And I always remember those conversations rather than a beautiful bridge.
Of course, of course. Going back to the trip, this is taking place in 2024. You're looking to accomplish it within 28 days, am I right? 28
days.
And what's the strategy?
Well, again, we want to make it possible for an ordinary man. You know, when you think of Cape to Cairo, it's the guys with the big Land Rovers or the Land Cruisers, right? It's all fancy, they're coming with a crew. And Cape to Cairo, it can be a trip for an ordinary man. 28 days where you can take leave. You know, ask your boss, you know what, boss, I'm just taking 28 days, I'm out, I'm going to Cairo. And that's the whole idea, to accommodate everybody. Travel is not necessarily a luxury. It should be a part of life because travel itself educates you. And that's what we want to take forward and make sure that everybody's got an opportunity to go to school in the most beautiful, exciting way,
Of course.
so to speak. Yeah.
And beyond Cairo, in the coming years, are you looking for Cape to Canada? Are we going to see other trips beyond the continent?
I think the continent is huge in itself. So if you look in terms of the routing, you still have West Africa. You still have West Africa to really explore. So our focus right now is to really, really do justice to our continent. And I think we never will be able to cover everything. However, it will take us a lifetime to go through the whole continent.
And anyone that wants to participate, are you still open to more participants wanting to join?
Oh yes. We can be found on info@cape2cairo24.com.
All right. Sanda, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We wish you all the best on that voyage.
Thank you.
And I'm sure you will accomplish within that 28 days.
Thank you so much.